In this video, I'm going to show you how I allocate hours for rehearsal schedules. Let's go. G'day, Paul from Small Crown Productions here. Welcome to the channel. When I first started directing, I cut my teeth on Shakespeare plays. I was part of a medieval reenactment group, I still am, and that was my creative outlet as an actor. I started producing and directing shows so that I could perform. But I found it really hard to work out how to allocate hours to rehearsal. I wasn't sure how long I should spend, what we should do. And it took me a bit of a while to actually develop a bit of a system that helped me a lot and has continued to help me every time I'm directing a show to this day. So what I want to do is jump on the computer and show you my system for breaking scenes down and allocating time that might help you as well. So let's jump on and have a look. So what you can see here is across the top I have the acts of the play and the scenes of the play. So we have acts and scenes. So we got Act 1, Scene 1, 2 and 3, Act 2, Scene 1 to 7, yada yada yada, across the top. Down the left hand column I have all of the characters' names. And so in these cells here is my personal physical count of the lines that character has in each scene. So this does take a little bit of tedious work to set up. I generally will do this myself because it's not something I want to impose on a stage manager or one of my producers. But if they're happy to do it, I'm happy to let them do it. But I generally end up doing this myself, partly because it's a really great way for me to get my head into the script from a kind of overview point of view. And so with a Shakespeare play, if it's a line of iambic, one single line I count as a line. So it's just to give you a consistent guide for all characters. If there is a line and a half, I might call that 2. If it's a line and a word or 2, I might call it 1. You can sort of make that decision yourself, but you want to get essentially a pretty clear idea of how many lines each character has in each scene. And that's what I've done. So scene 1, I go through every character and count the lines, enter it into this spreadsheet. Now, there's a couple of totals columns. At the right-hand side, that cell is calculating all of the lines that Rosalind has. So you can see Rosalind has a total of 581 lines. And that travels down for all of the cast. And you can see the total is 2,442 lines. This is the number of lines for all characters in each scene. So Act 1, Scene 1 has 146 lines. Act 1, Scene 2 has 222 lines. And what this gives you is a very quick overview of which are the biggest dialogue parts in the show and which are the biggest scenes overall as a scene, dialogue-wise, in the show. Now you'll see a bunch of zeros here. Those zeros represent characters who are on stage but have 0 lines. So I know that they are present and they need to be directed, but they don't have any lines. And so from a dialogue point of view, if I'm rehearsing that scene, I can just basically not have that actor there to save them coming in when they don't have any lines until we need to really hone in the reactions and the interplay there. So that gives me an overview of the play, both from a character point of view and a scene point of view. Now what you'll see here, the next line here is the total percentage of the play. So if I have 2,400 lines in this play and Act 1, Scene 1 is 146 lines, that is 6%, essentially 5.98% of the show. So for me, this is where I use the maths to help me allocate time. I basically thought, well, if that is 6% of the show, it should get 6% of my rehearsal time. So then I need to calculate how many hours of rehearsal we're going to have. This is time on the floor rehearsing the scenes. So I will take out the dress runs. I will take out the tech runs. And I will just have in here the time it takes to rehearse the play. Now, there are a couple of other things that I do. As an actor, I really got frustrated sometimes when I was rehearsing plays where you sometimes get into the last kind of week or so of rehearsals and there are scenes that you still have not run on the floor. And I know how frustrating that is as an actor, and I wanted to avoid that. So I have developed a system for myself where I block rehearsals into 3 sections: block 1, block 2, and block 3. At the end of every block, we do a stumble through of the show. So we will rehearse block 1 and then do a full run of the show. And that is scripts in hand. What do you remember from the scenes that we rehearsed? Stumbling through, literally stumbling through the show from beginning to end, to put all of it together. And there's a couple of reasons I do that. Number one is in block 1, I have already rehearsed every scene. Every single scene gets allocated time in block 1, and we run every scene. So by the end of block 1, every single scene has been touched once. That gives the actors just a great sense of relief in the fact that they know they've at least touched every scene. Then we put it all together, because that's when you start to see it's actually coming together as a show. And to get that so early in the rehearsal process is amazing. So that is a key thing for me. So we do block 1, we do a stumble through. We'll do block 2 where we touch every scene again, potentially, and then another stumble through. So then, 2/3 of the way through, sometimes 3/4 of the way through your rehearsal process, you've already run the show from beginning to end twice, and you're starting to see the development of that show come together. That is just satisfying for you as a director. It helps your actors get another sense of where the show is growing and developing to, because there will be scenes they haven't seen, and it just helps everybody see what we're building, and that's really crucial. And then you'll do block 3 and run into tech runs. So you'll dress runs rather, before you do your tech. So that is how I build my rehearsal schedules. Now, I might not schedule all of that. I'll leave that to the stage manager. But what I do with the information from this spreadsheet is help the stage manager get a sense of what I'm trying to achieve, and then use this to allocate the time. And there's a couple of ways that we do that. The first thing is we will decide what our actual allocated hours are in total for every scene. So you can see here, Act 1, Scene 1 should get 5.4 hours, which is the 5.98% of our total rehearsal time for the scene work. So I might decide to round that up to 5.5, or round it down to 5 and allocate that 0.4 somewhere else. Where there is a scene that is so small that it would normally get less than a half, if you actually just have these formatted as a number, that'll show up as 0 because it rounds it either up or down. I will allocate no less than 1 hour to every scene initially. So every scene will get 1 hour to work, and that then will be the total hours that it will get on the floor with actors before we hit dress runs. That will allocate out. You will decide where that is, and then hopefully that will come to the total number of hours that you have to rehearse. So as a really rough guide, I like to basically go an hour a minute. So if I'm rehearsing a 90-minute play, I will try and schedule 90 hours of rehearsal over however long we've got to rehearse. So these hours here are calculated by this percentage here being multiplied by the total available hours. So if I would normally work on 1 minute to 1 hour. So if I've got a 90-minute show, I'll try and allocate 90 hours of rehearsal. But if I can't get that, say I can only get 75 hours of rehearsal, well, then I can change this number down here to 75, and that will redo all of those numbers and tell me how much time I should allocate to each scene. So then I can go through and adjust my allocated hours based on that. So that gives me a benchmark to work from. So then I will generally add more time into rehearsal block 1, because that's the time where I'm wanting the actors to spend time getting a sense of the scene and working with each other, and kind of they semi-stage and semi-block it themselves usually when they're working on the script, and they'll play with movement and space and that kind of thing, and we'll start to get a general shape of the scene pretty early, because we're allowed to. And that time there is whatever you want to bring to the table, you just bring it. You just throw stupid stuff out there. I don't care what it is. We're playing, we're exploring, we're experimenting with this scene, and we have the time to do it. And my stage manager knows that from our 4.5 hours in this case, then I might allocate 2 hours to the first run of that scene in block 1. Then in block 2, I might allocate an hour, and then block 3, it might be half an hour to total our 4.5 hours, or whatever that added up to. It might be 2.5, 1.5 and a half, or whatever, however that works. But you get that idea of splitting that 4.5 hours up across the 3 blocks. Now, there's a couple of other things to take into account to your total rehearsal hours. You might need time for things like specials, fight choreography, dance choreography. You might need to allocate some special time because you have a really action-heavy scene that requires lots of entrances and exits, and you see that sometimes in Shakespeare plays. So where that's happening, I might throw a line in. Let's go, I might chuck a line in and call it action, because I know that there's a lot of action in that scene. And so then I might come down here and go, well, let's throw 20 lines of action in that. So it's 20 lines worth of time that we're allocating to that to help give us time for the action in that scene. The other thing that it helps you do is it helps you schedule the rehearsals so you're not wasting your actors' time. Now, this is coming from a place of independent production where generally people have day jobs. You are working rehearsals at evenings and weekends around people's work. So you're not getting a full-time, 40 hours a week in 1 week to rehearse with the whole cast. And so what this helps you do is look at the scenes and go, well, let's say Adam. We take Adam and we say, okay, Adam's in 4 scenes. Who else is in a scene with Adam? Well, we can go, it's these people, not those people. It is, Adam is in those scenes and that one. Great. So now we see Adam, but we also see the other people who are in these scenes with Adam. And so in all 4 of Adam's scenes, Orlando is in there. So every time Adam's at rehearsal, Orlando needs to be there. And then 3 of the scenes, well, 2 of the scenes are just Adam and Orlando. 1 of the scenes has Oliver, and the other scene has 3 other characters who are different. So we could do an evening where we just focus on Adam's scenes. And we go, okay, Adam, so we're going to start with Act 2, Scene 3, then we're going to move into Act 2, Scene 6, so that we're just doing the Orlando and the Adam scenes. Then we're going to work on the Oliver scene. We'll do Act 1, Scene 1, and then we'll go to Act 2, Scene 7, and the other actors can turn up and Oliver can go home. So Adam and Orlando are there all night. Oliver turns up an hour in, and then the other actors turn up an hour and a half to 2 hours in. Oliver gets to go home, and then they're all seeing out the evening. So you could do it that way. You could flip it the other way and start with all 4 actors working that scene, or you might start with Act 1, Scene 1, because it's Act 1, Scene 1 of the play. Oliver can go home. You might then jump to Act 2, Scene 7, so the other actors turn up, and you get the bulk of your actors in early, and then you run the 2 scenes at the end with just Adam and Orlando, so that you're sending people home as early as possible as well. You can schedule it however you want. But having this layout lets you quickly and easily see that. And then you can work through and go, well, these 2 people appear in these scenes together 4 times in the play. Let's just get those 2 people in for a night and run those 4 scenes. So my blocks of rehearsal are not done in sequence. I'm trying to maximize the opportunity for the actors, so they're not turning up to a rehearsal and wasting 2 hours sitting around doing nothing while other people are running scenes. So, obviously the expectation though is that they're running their lines themselves and working on that. They are welcome to be in the rehearsal space, running lines with other actors if they want, but their requirement is not to be there until the scheduled time. So that will normally be a little bit of time before we need them on stage so they can warm up, get into the space, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff. That's up to the stage manager to deal with for them. But this gives you a sense of how you can then also see, well, hang on a minute, we need to double up some of these characters. Well, we know that Adam is in 4 scenes. I did it again. So we know Adam is in 4 scenes, but he doesn't appear in the rest of the show. So what other characters could he perform? Well, look, there you go. He could then possibly become Jacques Du Bois in 3 other scenes. That's a possibility. He might play a lord as well. And so he gets a little bit of a workout in every act of the play. So you can start to really easily see where you can double up. And so for me, this is really crucial before we cast the show so that I can work out what the casting is going to be, how many actors do I actually require, and then I do the casting process based on that. And the actors know at the start, well, you're coming in, you're going to be playing Adam and then, you know, Jacques de Bois or whatever role doubles up there are. Now, one extra thing, if you want to get super, super granular, you can break the scenes down into beats. So if you're breaking a script down into its action beats, you can get even granular and do this process in beat form. And what you do is you end up with Act 1, Scene 1 being broken into 2 beats. And you can see that, well, in Act 1, Scene 1, we have Orlando, Oliver, and Adam. In Act 1, Scene 1, Beat 2, we actually only have Oliver and Charles. So, you know, there's an opportunity to get even more granular about the allocation of time for your actors. So the person playing Charles can come in and not have to sit around while you're rehearsing the front half of Act 1, Scene 1. They come in, the other guys can go home, and you just run Act 1, Scene 1, Beat 2 with those 2 actors. So you can get really supportive of your actors' time by breaking it down this way. That is my process for allocating time and scheduling rehearsal blocks in a show. I do this for every show, whether it's a Shakespeare show or a play that I've written, contemporary piece, whatever. This to me is just gold in how I get my head around the show and how we're going to rehearse it. It gives the actors a lot of confidence when you're directing them because they know, A, they're going to get to do every scene at least twice. There are some small scenes, like if you get that 10-line scene in, Act 3, Scene 1, you might do that in block 1 and actually have plenty of time to work through that and not feel like you need to touch it again until block 3, and you just refine it and build it into the rest of the show. And it might be in block 3 that you actually start pulling some scenes together and going, well, let's actually do Act 1 and then Act 2 and then Act 3, and you pull the acts together so you can get the entrances and exits right and the transitions correct. You might do that in block 3 and you're kind of using the time to allocate it in that way. So there's a lot of flexibility in there, but just being able to run through the scenes multiple times, it's, as a director, it gives me peace. As an actor, it always gives me peace to know that I'm not going to hit the last week of rehearsals and never have touched a scene. So hope that's of use to you. If you got something out of this, it would be great if you give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out some of the other videos that are on the channel, and I will see you there. Thanks.